Picture the scene: a freezing, rainy night where a heartless landlord throws a crib onto the wet pavement, sneering as he orders an eviction that leaves a single mom shivering in the cold. It's a shocking display of cruelty by Thomas Bennet, a man who believes his status makes him a god. But destiny has a wicked sense of humor, because in the ultimate act of instant karma, that same woman, Piper West, didn't just find a shelter, she bought the building the very next day. This isn't just a story, it is the most satisfying tale of revenge and vindication you will ever witness. We have all felt humiliated by a toxic boss or a powerful figure who treated us like dirt, haven't we? It's a universal pain that makes us desperate to see justice served. Get ready for a rich man poor woman saga that flips the script entirely. Thomas Bennet is about to face a tidal wave of regret as his victim becomes his employer, triggering a romance drama full of twists that will leave you gasping. This is a journey of transformation, proving that unconditional love for family is stronger than any billionaire's bank account. The stakes are massive as destiny forces a cruel man to his knees and elevates a struggling mother to power. Before we dive into this roller coaster of emotion, let's build this community together. Subscribe to join the movement, hit like if you believe in karma, and share this video to spread the hope. The rain slashed against the pavement with biblical violence, transforming the city street into a dark mirror of despair, while Piper West stood paralyzed, watching the destruction of her life unfold. Each droplet seemed to weigh a ton, soaking not just her threadbare clothes but her very soul, as her meager belongings were hurled out of the building like unwanted refuse. The sickening sound of wood splintering echoed like thunder when her daughter's crib hit the wet concrete, a cruel symbol of the eviction being executed with military precision. Thomas Bennet, the landlord in his impeccable suit and heart of stone, watched it all from the dry, illuminated lobby with a sneer playing on his lips, as if viewing a particularly boring play. "You are dead weight to my investment, Piper," he shouted, his voice cutting through the storm with a chill that froze her blood more than the wind ever could. He didn't see a struggling single mom fighting impossible odds, he saw only red numbers on a spreadsheet, a stain on his vision of a gentrified, profitable building. His cruelty wasn't just professional, it was personal, steeped in a heartless disdain for anyone who couldn't keep pace with his lavish lifestyle. He checked his gold watch impatiently, ignoring the infant's sharp wail that echoed the mother's anguish, treating the human tragedy before him as a mere administrative inconvenience. Piper West rushed to shield the stroller with her own body, feeling the humiliation burn her skin, a public shaming designed to break her completely. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, some with pity, others relieved they weren't the targets, turning the moment into a grotesque spectacle of social exclusion. Thomas Bennet gestured dismissively to the security guards to speed up the process, laughing at something one of them said, a joke made at the expense of her misery. That laughter was the most painful sound of the night, a confirmation that for men like him, the dignity of the poor was a currency with absolutely no value. "Please, Mr. Bennet, just one more week," she had begged hours earlier, swallowing her pride for the sake of her child, but she had met only a wall of arrogance and indifference. Now, on the street, surrounded by trash bags containing everything she owned, the reality of her situation crashed down on her with the weight of a life sentence. The feeling of being humiliated was visceral, an open wound pulsing with every look of contempt she received from the man who held power over her shelter. He represented the archetype of the tyrannical boss, drunk on an authority he used to crush the vulnerable, blind to the humanity he was destroying. Yet, amidst the tears mingling with the rain, a spark of indignation ignited in Piper's chest, a sudden heat born of raw, unadulterated injustice. She looked at Thomas one last time, etching every detail of his smug expression into her memory, swearing silently that this would not be the final chapter of her story. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was a matter of honor, a deep desire to prove she was more than the circumstance he was forcing upon her. The storm raged around them, a harbinger of the emotional chaos to come, but Piper held her head high, protecting what little remained of her dignity. Thomas Bennet turned his back, satisfied with the efficiency of his cruelty, brushing an imaginary speck of dust from his lapel, certain he had won. He had no idea that by casting this woman out into the cold night, he was triggering the mechanisms of an instant karma that would soon come to collect its debt. He believed himself untouchable, protected by his money and status, ignoring the universal law that every action generates a reaction of equal intensity. The street emptied, save for the debris of an interrupted life, but the energy left behind vibrated with the promise of future retribution. As she pushed the stroller down the slick sidewalk, with no destination and no shelter, Piper West felt fear try to paralyze her legs, but love for her daughter pushed her forward. She was walking into darkness, but she carried within her a luminous determination, the seed of a transformation she didn't even know she was capable of. Destiny had rolled the dice, and though the night was long and the road uncertain, the wheel of fortune was already beginning to turn. The nightmare of that night would become the fuel for the awakening of an uncontrollable force. Hours later, the sterile, oppressive environment of the municipal shelter contrasted violently with the storm outside, yet offered little comfort to Piper West's wounded soul. The air smelled of cheap disinfectant and despair, an olfactory reminder that she had hit the social rock bottom. Sitting on the edge of a narrow cot, her daughter finally sleeping a fitful sleep in her arms, she felt the crushing weight of being a single mom in a world that seemed to have conspired for her ruin. Every cough from the neighboring bunks, every murmur of a nightmare from another woman, was an echo of her own anxiety, creating a symphony of shared pain. She stroked her baby's face, her fingers tracing the soft line of her cheek, feeling an overwhelming wave of unconditional love that served as both anchor and armor. "We are not this," she whispered into the gloom, her voice trembling but charged with a fierce promise, "our dignity is not for sale, and our story does not end here."
The memory of Thomas Bennet's laugh still echoed in her mind, a ghostly sound threatening to steal her hope, but she blocked it with visions of a different future. She refused to be defined by that eviction, refused to let a man's cruelty shape her family's identity. Around her, other women huddled, ghosts of their own tragedies, each carrying the burden of broken systems and bad luck, a sisterhood forged in necessity. Piper West listened to fragments of stories whispered in the darkness, tales of loss and abandonment that made her own suffering feel part of a larger fabric of injustice. It was a brutal reminder that justice was often a privilege reserved for the rich, an abstract concept that rarely touched the cold floors of places like this. But paradoxically, it was here, surrounded by defeat, that she found a reserve of raw strength, a resilience stemming from generations of survivors. She pulled a battered notebook from her damp bag, the pages wavy from humidity, and began to list her options, which were terrifyingly scarce. The pen shook in her hand, not from cold, but from the residual adrenaline of trauma and contained rage simmering beneath her pale skin. The feeling of regret tried to invade her thoughts, regret for not saving more, for trusting the wrong people, but she purged it, knowing guilt was a luxury she couldn't afford. She needed to be strategic. She needed to be the boss of her own resurrection, even if she was starting from absolute zero. The shelter lights went out, plunging the hall into long, scary shadows, but Piper's mind continued to race, refusing to rest. She knew Thomas Bennet would be sleeping in Egyptian silk sheets, oblivious of the devastation he had caused, and that image served as fuel for her productive insomnia. She touched a locket that had belonged to her father, remembering his teachings on integrity and courage, values that seemed out of fashion in today's cruel world. She promised herself, in that oppressive silence, that she would do the impossible to tip that balance of power. The night seemed endless, every minute dragging like an hour, as she planned, dreamed, and prayed for a miracle that seemed unreachable. She didn't know that destiny was working behind the scenes, preparing a twist so shocking it would defy logic. That shelter, with its peeling walls and palpable sadness, would be the womb of her rebirth, the ground zero of a meteoric rise. While her daughter sighed in sleep, Piper clenched her fists, transforming her fear into a sharp weapon. Dawn would bring the harsh light of reality, demanding she face the world again as a pariah. But inside her, something had irrevocably changed. The victim had died on that rainy sidewalk. The one waking up the next morning would be a warrior ready for battle. The universe was about to hand her the keys to the kingdom, and she would be ready to turn them with the force of 1,000 storms. While Piper tried to sleep in the shelter, Thomas Bennet presided over a profane celebration in an exclusive club, where the air was thick with the smoke of Cuban cigars and the arrogance of old money. He raised a crystal goblet, the golden champagne capturing the light of the chandeliers, toasting to what he called progress, but which was actually pure social barbarism. "We cleaned out the building today," he announced with pride, his voice reverberating with the self-satisfaction of a man who sees himself as a god among insects. He described the eviction as an act of necessary hygiene, dehumanizing Piper West and the other tenants with terms like trash and obstacles. His friends, a collection of corporate vultures and spoiled heirs, laughed in approval, validating his distorted worldview where profit always trumps people. They shared stories of their own cruel real estate conquests, competing to see who could be more heartless in the name of business. Thomas Bennet felt like a billionaire, inflated by the adulation of his peers and the expensive alcohol coursing through his veins, blind to the moral rot underpinning his lifestyle. He mocked the moment the crib broke, turning a child's tragedy into a bar anecdote, demonstrating a pathological lack of empathy. "We are raising the standard," Thomas declared. Leaning back in a soft leather armchair, low-income people have no place in the future I am building. For him, gentrification was a divine crusade, and he was the profit arm with eviction notices and rent hikes. The concept of regret was alien to his psyche as conscience had been cauterized long ago by greed and the certainty of his superiority. It was a classic rich man, poor woman scene, where the rich celebrate the destruction of the poor, completely oblivious to the cosmic forces watching their hubris. The conversation flowed to future plans, strategies to squeeze every last cent out of vulnerable families, treating human beings like cattle in a financial slaughterhouse. Thomas Bennet felt invincible, protected by the walls of that club and the bank account he believed was his impenetrable armor. He didn't realize he was dancing on the edge of a volcano, that instant karma was already sharpening its blade for the fatal blow. His celebration was premature, a farewell party for a life of privilege that was about to be revoked. As the night wore on, the laughter became shriller, the alcohol stripping away the last layers of social politeness and revealing the true monstrous face of the predatory elite. Thomas toasted to the new beginning, unaware that the new beginning would belong to the woman he had discarded. He saw himself as a protagonist of a success story, the hero of his own twisted narrative. Irony hung over his head like a sword, invisible and deadly, waiting for the right moment to fall. He left the club stumbling slightly, feeling like the owner of the city, the skyscraper lights blinking as if applauding him. He got into his luxury car, isolated from the real world by tinted glass and air conditioning, driving home with the clean conscience of a sociopath. He slept the sleep of the just, or rather, the sleep of the ignorant, dreaming of more wealth and power. Little did he know that this would be his last night of true peace, the last moment he would feel at the top of the food chain. Dawn would bring a tectonic shift, and the house of cards he had built on the misery of others was about to be blown away by a hurricane named Piper. The morning light invaded the public library, illuminating the dust dancing in the air around Piper West, who had sought refuge there to use the free internet. With hands trembling from cold and anxiety, she turned on the old laptop her father had left her, a heavy, noisy machine that seemed as tired as she was. She remembered the USB drive, that digital wallet he had mentioned in his final delirious moments, something about obscure crypto that she at the time had dismissed as a sick man's fantasy. With nothing left to lose, she inserted the device, typing the password he had made her memorize like a nursery rhyme, expecting nothing but corrupted files. When the screen flickered and the account balance finally loaded, time stopped, and the ambient sound of the library was sucked into a vacuum of absolute disbelief. The numbers on the screen didn't make sense. There were too many digits, too many commas, a value that oscillated and grew before her wide eyes. The forgotten digital coins mined years ago when they were worthless had skyrocketed in value, transforming that dormant account into a fortune worthy of a billionaire. Piper West felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. The shock was so physical she had to grip the edge of the table to keep from falling out of her chair. It was a shocking twist, a black swan event that instantly rewrote the laws of her miserable existence. The single mom who counted coins to buy milk was now, technically, one of the wealthiest women in that zip code. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in her throat, stifled by a shaking hand over her mouth, while hot tears of shock streamed down her pale face. The universe hadn't just given her a life raft, it had given her an entire ocean liner in a glorious act of instant karma. She looked at her daughter sleeping in the stroller beside the desk, oblivious to the financial storm that had just occurred, and a wave of vindication swept through her body like electricity. The constant fear, the shame, the insecurity. It all evaporated, replaced by a crystalline, dangerous clarity. But as the shock subsided, something darker and more focused took its place, the memory of Thomas Bennet's face. Financial security was a relief, yes, but the money gave her something much sweeter, the ability to demand justice. Piper West didn't think about buying sports cars or jewelry. Her first instinct was strategic, guided by an intelligence sharpened by survival on the streets. She began to research frantically, her fingers flying over the worn keyboard, accessing public records and corporate structures of the building she'd been evicted from. The idea formed complete in her mind, audacious and perfect, a masterstroke on a board Thomas didn't even know existed. She wasn't going to run away to a life of quiet luxury. She was going to use her new power to correct the wrong at the source. It was the ultimate inversion of the rich man, poor woman narrative. But now the poor woman had the financial nuclear power to dictate the rules. She closed the laptop with a decisive snap, feeling like a general who had just received the launch codes. The library, one to shelter for the destitute, transformed into her war room. She looked around, seeing the other patrons, and felt a surreal disconnection. She was among them, but she was no longer one of them. She gathered her few belongings with methodical calm, walking out of the library with a stride that didn't ask for permission, but demanded space. The world outside still looked the same, gray and indifferent, but Piper West now carried the power to shape it to her will. The Hun had begun, and the prey, fat and satisfied in his plush office, didn't stand a chance. Moving with the precision of a vengeful ghost, Piper West contacted an elite law firm, using a fraction of her wealth to buy absolute secrecy and legal aggression. She instructed the lawyers to act as her proxies, creating an impenetrable layer of anonymity between her and the target. Her order was clear and non-negotiable by the entire building complex belonging to Thomas Bennet's investment group. She didn't want to haggle, she wanted a scorched earth victory, authorizing an offer triple the market value that would make the investors drool with greed. The lawyers, accustomed to the eccentricities of the rich, were stunned by the aggression of the offer, but executed it without question, seduced by the astronomical fees. "I want the deed today," she ordered from her luxury hotel room, where she had finally taken a hot shower and the current management stays. Pending my review, by offering such an obscene amount, she bypassed Thomas Bennet entirely, going straight to the jugular of the shareholders who actually held the power. They would see the numbers and sell their souls, and the building, before Thomas could even finish his morning coffee, bought the building. The phrase echoed in her mind like a mantra of power. This was the ultimate revenge, not an act of physical violence, but a corporate annihilation, using Thomas' own God Manito to destroy him. She imagined the chaos in the boardroom, the greed of the investors trampling any loyalty they might have had to the cruel manager. It was a deeply satisfying thought, knowing that the system that had oppressed her was now being hacked by her to serve her purposes. She signed the digital documents with a steady hand, feeling every stroke of the electronic pen like a nail in the coffin of Thomas' arrogance. The transaction was completed at light speed, cash lubricating the gears of bureaucracy with frightening efficiency. Piper West was now, legally, the owner of the place where she had cried on the sidewalk, the landlady of her own tormentor. It was a dizzying ascent, a transformation that felt like a fairy tale, but with a dark twist of poetic justice. She looked at herself in the mirror, seeing no longer the scared victim, but a woman reborn in the fire of adversity. She spent the afternoon buying clothes, not for vanity, but to build her battle armor. She needed to look the unquestionable boss. Every piece of designer clothing, every accessory, was chosen to project power and authority, to ensure that when she walked into that room, Thomas would instinctively know he was outmatched. The anticipation of the confrontation kept her in a state of electric euphoria and icy focus. She knew the reveal would be a seismic shock, and she savored every second of the preparation, anticipating the look of terror in his eyes. It wasn't just about reclaiming a roof. It was about teaching Thomas Bennet a lesson in humanity he would never forget. She was the invisible hand of destiny, ready to make a fist. As night fell, she held Thomas' future in the palm of her hand. The game was set. The traps were armed, and the king was about to discover that the board had changed owners. The summons arrived on Thomas Bennet's desk in a heavy, cream-colored envelope, looking like a royal invitation to his own coronation, completely blinding him to the imminent danger. The letter demanded his presence at a mandatory meeting with the new mystery owner, a figure who had emerged from the shadows to buy the portfolio. His initial confusion was quickly replaced by narcissistic excitement. He assumed his brilliant and ruthless management had attracted a billionaire investor who recognized his talent. Finally, someone with vision, he told the mirror, adjusting his tie with a smug smile, believing destiny was handing him the promotion he deserved. He spent the morning polishing his ego, preparing charts showing projected revenue increase from evicting undesirable tenants, treating human lives like fat to be trimmed. He bragged to his assistant about the meeting, speculating he would be named partner or receive a fat bonus to expand his gentrification tactics. The idea that this could be a trap was inconceivable to him in his world. Money protected the cruel, and he felt like a lifetime member of that exclusive club. He walked through the office like a peacock, puffing out his chest, treating his subordinates with even more disdain, certain of his invincibility. The new owner clearly understands business. Thomas remarked to a colleague, "They paid triple. That means deep pockets and big plans for me." He was writing his own corporate fan fiction, where he was a misunderstood hero about to be exalted. He arrived at the conference room early, sitting at the head of the table, practicing his winning smile, ready to charm and manipulate. He was ready to sell his soul for a bigger piece of the pie, unaware the pie was poisoned. The air in the room was charged, vibrating with an electric tension Thomas misinterpreted as the gravity of a big deal. He checked his watch, impatient, eager to meet the person who would validate his predatory existence. He imagined an old tycoon, someone with whom he could share cigars and contempt for the poor, reinforcing his rich man, poor woman worldview where he was always on top. He hadn't the slightest clue that the script was about to be flipped upside down. When the doorknob turned, Thomas Bennet stood up, smoothing his jacket, a fawning grin plastered on his face, ready to shake the hand of his future patron. He expected an ally, an accomplice in exploitation. He did not expect the deafening silence that was about to fill the room. The door opened slowly, revealing the empty hallway, creating a cinematic suspense that made Thomas' heart skip a beat. He was standing on the edge of an abyss, stepping forward into the dark, believing there was solid ground. The meeting was about to begin, and Thomas was hilariously, tragically unprepared for reality. The shocking truth was seconds away, ready to shatter his carefully constructed reality. The boardroom door swung fully open, but the entrance remained empty for an agonizing second, ratcheting up the tension. Then, the high-backed leather chair at the opposite head of the table, which had been facing the panoramic window, slowly spun around, revealing the figure occupying the throne. Thomas Bennet's mouth opened to utter a rehearsed greeting, but the words died instantly, strangled by a paralyzing shock. There, sitting with the posture of a queen and dressed in a suit that cost more than his car, was Piper West. The silence that fell over the room was absolute, a vacuum where Thomas' arrogance used to dwell. It was the most shocking moment of his life, a visual hallucination his brain refused to process. "Hello, Thomas," said Piper West, her voice cool, controlled, and sharp as a razor blade, with no trace of fear he had heard days ago. She didn't need to shout, her mere presence filled the space with crushing authority. Thomas Bennet blinked repeatedly, looking around for cameras, for a prank, for the real owner. "You? But the eviction?" He stammered, his facade of confidence crumbling like a sandcastle at high tide. "I am the owner," Piper declared, placing her manicured hands on the mahogany table. "I bought the building. Every brick, every pipe, and every contract, including yours." The realization hit him like a freight train. The single mom he had thrown into the rain was now his supreme employer. The power dynamic had shifted so violently he felt physical vertigo, the world spinning off its axis. It was instant karma in its purest, most distilled form, divine retribution, leaving him exposed and deeply humiliated. But how? He whispered, sinking into his chair, seeming to physically shrink. "Let's just say my luck changed," Piper replied with an enigmatic smile. "Unlike your character." She watched him squirm, savoring the satisfying sight of a bully reduced to a confused, frightened child. You fired a mother because she was poor, she continued, relentless. You thought you were better than everyone. Now you answer to me. Thomas Bennet looked at her and saw, for the first time, not a victim, but a titan, a force of nature. The rich man, poor woman dichotomy had dissolved now. There was only the boss and the terrified subordinate. Am I fired? Thomas asked, his voice cracking, waiting for the final blow, the logical guillotine. It would be the expected conclusion, the obvious revenge. He braced himself to be escorted out by security, for the public shame he knew he deserved. He closed his eyes, waiting for the impact. But Piper West leaned forward, her eyes piercing his soul. Firing you would be too easy, Thomas, she said softly, and it wouldn't teach you a thing. She let the words hang in the air, a sword of Damocles suspended by a thread. I have a different plan for you, she announced, and the mystery of her intentions was far more terrifying to him than a simple termination. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. Thomas Bennet was no longer the hunter. He was a prey in a game whose rules he completely failed to understand. Piper West stood up, walking slowly around the table, the rhythmic click of her heels sounding like a bomb countdown. You are not fired, she repeated, watching hope flare in Thomas Bennet's eyes only to extinguish it brutally a second later. However, your position as property manager is dissolved, effective immediately. She slid a simple contract across the polished table. I am demoting you. You are now the building superintendent, the janitor. You will live in the basement unit, and you will serve the tenants you mocked. Thomas stared at the paper, horrified, as if it were a death sentence. The janitor? You want me to unclog toilets? Fix leaks? The indignation in his voice was palpable, his ego screaming in protest. I am a developer. I have a degree. Piper West didn't blink, her expression stony. You have a choice, Thomas. Take the job. Keep your salary and benefits, which I know you desperately need to pay your gambling debts and maintain appearances, or walk out now with nothing and a destroyed reputation in this town. She knew his financial secrets. She knew he was leveraged to the hilt, trying to look like a billionaire. It was a masterclass in justice. She wasn't taking food from his mouth. She was forcing him to walk in the shoes of the people he despised. You need to learn what it means to serve, she said, to understand that the people in this building are human beings, not low-value assets. Thomas Bennet felt the walls closing in. He was cornered. His pride screamed at him to leave and slam the door, but his bank account screamed louder for him to stay and submit. He signed the paper with a shaking hand, feeling the weight of regret settle on his shoulders like a lead vest. He was no longer the boss, he was a help, the invisible man. Report to maintenance at 8 a.m., Piper ordered, dismissing him with an indifferent wave of her hand. The humiliation was total, absolute, but it was also a chance, though he couldn't see it through the fog of his anger, a chance for transformation. As he left the boardroom, stripped of his title and his manufactured dignity, he felt a toxic mix of fury and fear. He was going to be the janitor in his own imaginary kingdom. The irony was suffocating, almost comic if it weren't tragic. Piper West watched him leave, knowing this was the only way to crack the hard shell of his inflated ego. This wasn't just revenge, it was forced rehabilitation. Tough love on a corporate scale. She was betting high that somewhere, deep down beneath layers of cruelty, there was a human being worth saving. But for now, he had to sweat and bleed. Thomas Bennet loosened his tie, the symbol of his white-collar status, now feeling like a noose. He was about to enter a world of manual labor and humility, a world he had judged from the height of his ivory tower. The descent into hell, or perhaps purgatory, had begun. The first week was a physical and psychological nightmare for Thomas Bennet. Swapping his tailored Italian suits for a rough gray jumpsuit was a blow to his identity, a daily, abrasive reminder of his fall from grace. He struggled with manual labor, his soft, manicured hands blistering painfully as he hauled heavy trash and crawled under sinks to fix dripping pipes. The tenants, recognizing the man who had previously turned his nose up at them in the elevator, watched him with a mix of vindictive amusement and cautious suspicion. The humiliation was constant, inhaled with every breath. Every clogged drain was a monument to his new reality. every trivial request from a resident felt like a slap to his wounded pride. He hated Piper West with an incandescent passion, cursing her name as he scrubbed graffiti off brick walls. Yet, amidst the grumbling and back pain, something subtle was happening, almost imperceptible. He was seeing the building from the inside out, not as a spreadsheet, but as a living organism. He saw the elderly woman in 3B struggling with her grocery bags, and for the first time, felt the impulse to help not out of obligation, but out of human reflex. He saw the young couple in 4C trying to stretch their rent money. The low-value tenants were becoming people with names, faces, and stories. But his heart was still hardened, encased in layers of defensive resentment. He felt like a victim, blind to the fact that this was his necessary penance. Enter Silas Thorne, a corrupt and predatory rival developer who had coveted the building for years. Silas approached Thomas one afternoon by the dumpsters, moving like a shark smelling blood in the water. "Hard work, huh, Bennett?" Silas smirked, lighting an expensive cigar, the smoke wrapping around Thomas like a temptation. He saw a golden opportunity in low-mass misery. Silas wanted the building, and knew Piper West wouldn't sell by legal means. He needed an inside man to sabotage the operation, to make the investment look like a dangerous failure and force Piper to liquidate the asset. "Help me," Silas whispered with the voice of a serpent, "and it'll put you back in a corner office. Real power. No more plungers. You go back to the top." It was a Faustian proposal, straight from the devil. Thomas Bennet listened, his resentment for Piper warring violently with a small, budding sense of duty he didn't recognize. Silas proposed small acts of sabotage cutting power, breaking the Boilerdo Drive tenants out and lower the property value. Thomas hesitated, the internal conflict visible on his grease-stained face. The old Thomas would have jumped at the chance for revenge and easy money without a second thought. But looking at the building, he saw the face of the little girl who had waved at him that morning, Piper's daughter. A moral conflict was forming, a dilemma of the soul. Check in emotional, be honest. Do you think he's going to betray her again? He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. He walked away, leaving Silas with a cryptic, dangerous nod. The seed of betrayal had been planted, but ironically, the seed of regret and conscience was also beginning to germinate. He was at a moral crossroads, and the jumpsuit felt like it weighed tons. Back in his basement apartment, damp and dark, Thomas looked at his calloused, bleeding hands. He was exhausted, bone-tired in a way he had never been before. He was starting to learn the value of an honest day's work, but the poison of the past still ran in his veins, whispering promises of easy power. The true test of his character was just beginning. The sabotage began abruptly and violently, but it wasn't Thomas who pulled the trigger. Silas, impatient with his pawn's hesitation and ruthless in his greed, decided to force the issue. While Thomas was busy fixing a radiator on the 5th floor, sweating and focused, a mercenary hired by Silas sneaked into the basement utility room. With malignant precision, he tampered with the main gas line, creating a dangerous leak designed to cause mass panic and force a damning evacuation. It was a heartless and cowardly move that put innocent lives, including children, at mortal risk, all in the name of a real estate deal. The unmistakable, nauseating smell of gas permeated the hallway and stairwells just as Thomas Bennet was coming down. Panic exploded. Fire alarms began to scream, a piercing sound that froze his blood. Thomas, acting on a newfound instinct of protection, didn't run for the exit. He ran toward the danger. He dove into the boiler room, coughing and choking on toxic fumes, his eyes watering. With brute strength born of desperation, he managed to shut off the main valve seconds before a spark could turn the building into a fireball, saving the structure from a catastrophic explosion. He collapsed outside in the alley, sucking fresh air into his burning lungs, waiting, perhaps, to be recognized as a hero he had been. But Silas had played his cards with diabolical mastery. The police arrived and, in a quick sweep, found tools with Domas fingerprint stools he had innocently left on the workbench planted strategically next to the sabotage valve. The narrative was spun instantly. The disgruntled ex-manager, humiliated and demoted, trying to destroy his boss investment out of pure spite. It looked perfect. The motive was clear revenge. The evidence was irrefutable. Piper West arrived on the scene, her face pale with terror, clutching her daughter tightly. She saw Thomas in handcuffs, being read his rights under the strobing lights of police cruisers. The rival developer stood in the shadows, smiling discreetly. For Piper, the scene was a final tableau of absolute betrayal. She had given him a second chance, a path to redemption, and he had apparently tried to blow up the building with her and her daughter inside. "I didn't do this," Thomas shouted, his voice hoarse and desperate, his wide eyes seeking Piper's gaze to the crowd and smoke. "I tried to stop it. I saved you, but the optics were impossible to ignore." Piper West felt a cold stone settle in her stomach, the bitter taste of deception flooding her mouth. She wanted to believe in his transformation, but this was unforgivable. The media, anonymously tipped off by Silas, was already there, cameras pointed at Thomas like weapons, painting him as a gas leak monster. Thomas Bennet was dragged into the cruiser, screaming his innocence to wind, realizing with paralyzing horror that he was being framed by the very man who had offered him an out. It was a moment of absolute despair. The vindication he sought by saving the building was twisted into a heinous crime. He was alone, truly alone for the first time, facing prison for an act of bravery, while the real villain watched untouchable. The weight of injustice nearly crushed him in the back seat of the police car. Piper West sat in her office, lights off, the silence broken only by the sound of her own stifled sobs. She felt betrayed and heartbroken, not just as a deceived employer, but as a woman who had dared to believe in the inherent goodness of someone who had hurt her. She had seen small changes in Thomas, the way he helped Mrs. Higgins, the way he actually fixed things instead of ignoring them. She thought she was witnessing a real transformation, a romance drama of the soul where the beast becomes a prince. But the gas leak shattered that illusion into 1,000 sharp shards. "He tried to kill us," she whispered to herself, the thought sending shivers down her spine. The stress was unbearable. Tenants were terrified, threatening to leave en masse. The insurance company threatened to cancel the policy, and the city opened a rigorous investigation. Silas Thorne swooped in like a patient vulture, making a lowball offer to buy the troubled property and rid her of the burden. "It's too much for a single mom to handle alone," he told her with feigned, sickening sympathy. Defeated, exhausted, and fearing for her daughter's continued safety, Piper West made the agonizing decision to sell. She fired Thomas Bennet formally, sending the notification to the jail where he awaited a hearing. "I'm sorry," she said to the empty room, feeling like a failure. "I tried." She prepared the sale papers, feeling as if she were signing her own surrender. The building, her symbol of justice and empowerment, was becoming an unsustainable burden. She felt foolish, naive for thinking she could change the nature of a man like Thomas. The unconditional love she held for humanity felt like a weakness in the face of such malice. She began to pack her things again, a cruel echo of that eviction night that started it all. The cycle seemed to be closing in on her, crushing her dreams. Meanwhile, Thomas sat in a cold, gray holding cell, the reality of a situation sinking in like an anchor. He had lost his job, his home, and most painfully, the trust of the only person who had given him a hand. But in the silence of the cell, the fog of his old arrogance finally cleared completely. He wasn't angry at Piper for firing him. He was furious with himself for even listening to Silas, for hesitating. He was released on bail paid with the last scraps of his secret savings, but he had nowhere to go. He was homeless, exactly as Piper had been. The circle was complete, the irony perfect. But unlike the old Thomas who would have blamed the world, this new Thomas didn't allow himself to wallow. He felt fire in his gut, a burning need to clear his name and save Piper from Silas. Piper West looked at the unsigned contract on her desk. The pen seemed to weigh a ton in her hand. She was moments away from signing away her legacy. The defeat was palpable, the air heavy with the sadness of broken dreams. Thomas Bennet, now wandering the streets with his belongings in a black trash bag, felt the biting cold of the reign of poetic justice he didn't fail to appreciate with bitterness. He was a homeless man, part of the very demographic he had despised and mocked. But his mind wasn't focused on his own misery or hunger. It was obsessively focused on the building. He knew in his bones that Silas was behind the frame-up. He had to prove it. He remembered seeing Silas Mercenary lurking near the basement entrance days before, an image that now made terrible sense. He sneaked back to the building under the cover of night, avoiding the yellow police tape, risking his bail conditions and his own safety. He wasn't there to sabotage, he was there to investigate, a detective of his own disgrace. He broke into the security room, sweating cold, praying the hidden backup servers hadn't been wiped by the police or Silas. His hands shook uncontrollably as he accessed the footage, his eyes scanning hours of static, monotonous video. Re-engagement hook he's about to give up when he sees Ida Digital Ghost, a shadow that changes everything. There it was, a frozen frame, grainy but undeniable, showing Silas shaking hands with a mercenary and handing him the specific wrench found at the scene, right in the alley behind the building, hours before the leak. And more audio from a hidden camera Thomas himself had installed years ago to spy on tenants, a relic of his old paranoia, now his salvation. The audio captured Silas' voice crystal clear, bragging about the plan to frame the janitor, scare the mom, buy the building cheap. Thomas Bennet felt an adrenaline rush so strong he nearly fainted. He had the smoking gun, the irrefutable proof. But then his eyes fell on the clock on the monitor. The meeting to finalize the sale was happening in 1 hour. He was filthy, smelled of smoke and sweat, was a fugitive in the eyes of the tenants, and had no car. He started running. He ran through the wet streets, clutching the USB drive against his chest as it were a transplanted heart, his only lifeline. He wasn't running for his job. He was running for Piper West. He realized, in that moment of extreme physical effort, that he didn't just want to clear his name, he wanted to protect her. He cared. The heartless shell had cracked completely, revealing a man capable of real sacrifice. The rival developer must already be at Piper's office, pen ready, smiling that oily smile of victory. Thomas pushed his body to the limit, his lungs burning like fire, his legs screaming. He was a man on a suicide mission, fueled by regret for his past and the desperate need for vindication. He was no longer a wannabe billionaire, but for the first time in his miserable life, he felt rich in purpose. He had to stop her. He had to save the building. He had to save them. Piper West held the pen, the tip hovering shakily over the signature line, feeling as if she were about to sign her spiritual death warrant. Silas sat across from her, feigning patience, but his eyes gleamed with poorly disguised predatory greed. "It's best for everyone, Piper," he said in a honeyed voice. "Cut your losses and move on." She took a deep breath, ready to give up, exhaustion defeating her will. Suddenly, the office door exploded open with a crash that made the windows rattle. Thomas Bennet stood there, drenched, gasping desperately, looking like a madman swept in by the storm. "Don't sign it," he bellowed, stumbling into the room, leaving a trail of dirty water on the expensive carpet. Silas jumped from his chair, alarmed and furious. "Call security. This man is dangerous. He's a criminal." But Thomas ignored him completely, advancing to the desk and slamming the USB drive hard onto the glass surface. "It wasn't me, Piper. It was him. Watch it. Please, for the love of God, just watch it." His eyes were pleading, raw, honest in a way Piper had never seen before. Piper West paused, the pen dropping from her hand. She saw the desperation in his face, the grime on his clothes, the absolute lack of ego or arrogance. With trembling hands, she plugged the drive into her laptop. The video loaded. The audio of Silas plotting the sabotage filled the room, clear and damning. The color drained from Silas' face instantly, transforming his smugness into pure terror. Piper West watched, her eyes widening in shock and horror. The truth was undeniable, exposed in high definition. Thomas Bennet hadn't betrayed her. He had been the scapegoat of a vile plot. "You!" Piper turned to Silas, her voice low and vibrating with volcanic fury. "Get out, now, before I call the police and have you arrested for attempted murder and fraud." Silas, realizing his game was spectacularly over, grabbed his briefcase clumsily, stuttering incoherent excuses. He fled the room like a rat. His plan disintegrated in seconds, leaving the two of them alone in the sudden silence of the office. Thomas Bennet collapsed against the wall, his legs finally giving way to exhaustion. "I didn't do it," Piper. I swear, I tried to save the building. I risked everything. He slid to the floor, sitting there like a broken child, his energy totally spent. He had risked his bail, his safety, his life, just to bring her that proof, not to save himself, but to save her investment. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was charged with electric realization. Piper West looked at the man on the floor, soaked and vulnerable. He wasn't the arrogant, cruel landlord of before. He was a man who had fought for her legacy when he had absolutely nothing to gain from it. Justice had arrived, breathless and soaked in rain. The sale was off. The building was saved. And Thomas was innocent. The complexity of the moment hung between them, transforming the room into a sanctuary of revealed truth. Piper West ignored protocol in her expensive suit, kneeling on the floor beside Thomas. She saw the cuts on his hands, the tremor of exhaustion in his body, the vulnerability in his downcast eyes. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. He had saved her. He could have walked away, left town, started over anywhere, but he came back. He ran into the fire for her. The last of the emotional walls and mistrust between them shattered in that instant, pulverized by the evidence of his loyalty. "You came back," she whispered, touching his shoulder with a gentleness that made him shudder. Thomas Bennet looked up, his eyes full of a raw, painful honesty she had never imagined seeing the man who had evicted her. "I couldn't let him win. I couldn't let you lose everything you built. Not after everything." It was a moment of pure connection, stripping away the titles of boss and employee, rich and poor. They were just two surviving souls. She realized his transformation was real, forged in pain and humility. The crucible of the last few weeks had burned away the dross of his personality, leaving only the gold. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you," she said, her voice choked with the cry she tried to hold back. "I was so afraid, so blinded by past pain." "You had every right," Thomas admitted, shaking his head. "I was a monster to you. I deserved every doubt." They sat there on the office floor, the storm outside passing, giving way to a deep calm. A silent understanding passed between them, stronger than any contract. The romance drama tension that had been simmering on a low heat was now undeniable, built on a solid foundation of shared trauma and mutual redemption. Piper West saw him clearly now, without filters, not as the enemy, not as a charity project, but as an equal partner. He had proven his loyalty in the fire of adversity. The satisfying click of emotional puzzle pieces fitting together echoed in her heart. She helped him stand, holding his hand firmly. "You need a doctor, and a hot shower, and real food." Her tone was soft, protective. The dynamic had shifted again to something balanced and human. He had fought for her legacy with a ferocity that moved her. Now, she would fight for his future with the same intensity. They left the office together, leaving behind the sale papers and Silas' ghost, walking toward a new beginning. Days later, the building breathed a new peace. The truth about Silas had been exposed in the press, and the tenants, once hostile, now greeted Thomas with respect and gratitude, seeing him in a new heroic light. Thomas Bennet stood on the roof with Piper West, watching the sunset dye the city orange and purple. The breeze blew gently, very different from the storm of that first night. "I need to apologize," he said, breaking the comfortable silence, looking at her with absolute seriousness. "Not just for the eviction, but for who I was, for thinking status made me a man." He leaned his hands on the parapet, looking out at the vastness of the city, working for you, living in that basement, being invisible. It taught me something no business school teaches. True wealth isn't in the bank account or the car you drive. It's in kindness. It's in community. It's in having people who watch your back when the world collapses. He turned to her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "You taught me that, Piper, and I will be grateful for the rest of my life for breaking me so I could be fixed." Piper West smiled, feeling hot tears in her own eyes. This was the vindication she had wanted in the beginning, but it was infinitely sweeter and deeper than she had imagined. It wasn't about seeing him crushed under her boot. It was about seeing him healed of his own toxicity. "You are a good man, Thomas. It took a while to find him under all that expensive armor, but he's here now, and I like him. The bitter regret of the past was washed away by the luminous promise of the present. Thomas had learned the hardest lesson of all through humiliation and service, and had come out the other side a better, more complete human being. The heartless landlord was dead, and buried in his place stood someone capable of empathy. "I don't want to be a predatory developer anymore," Thomas said, his voice firm with new resolve. "I want to build homes, not investments. I want to create places where no one ever has to feel the fear you felt that night." Piper West nodded, feeling immense pride. "Good, because I have a proposal for you that will require exactly that kind of heart." The sun disappeared over the horizon, but for them, it was just the dawn. A new chapter was beginning, written not with ink of greed, but with the indelible ink of shared experience. "I am not rehiring you as superintendent," Piper West announced the next morning, a playful and mysterious glint in her eye. Thomas Bennet looked confused, a flicker of fear crossing his face before she continued. "I am making you my partner, not an employee, an equal." She handed him a new contract, leather-bound but very different from the previous one. "We are going to launch a new initiative together. Truly affordable housing. Dignified homes for people like me. Like us. No cruel evictions. No blind greed." Thomas took the document, his hands trembling slightly, the weight of the offer overwhelming him in the best possible way. Partner? The word seemed too big, more than he deserved, yet exactly what his soul needed. It was a seal of absolute trust, a symbol of unconditional love and radical forgiveness. They announced the initiative to the tenants in the lobby that afternoon, and the announcement was met with thunderous applause and tears of relief. When the crowd dispersed, they stood alone in the lobby, the same cold, sterile lobby where he had evicted her months before. But now, the energy was unrecognizable. It was warm, welcoming. The space seemed to have been exorcised of its ghosts. Thomas Bennet looked at Piper West, the woman he had tried to destroy and who had ended up saving him from himself. "Thank you," he whispered, the word charged with 1,000 meanings. She took a step toward him, closing the physical and emotional distance. "Thank you for coming back to me." They sealed their union, professional and personal, with a kiss. It wasn't a movie kiss, staged and perfect. It was a deep kiss, full of history, forgiveness, and promise. It was a final validation that the past was forgiven and the future was theirs to build. It was a perfect ending to a rich man, poor woman story, proving that destiny can be rewritten, that people can change fundamentally, and that in the end, love and kindness are the only currency that really matters in this world. The cycle of hate had transformed into a circle of protection. Thomas Bennet's journey proves a timeless truth: money might buy you a building, but only character can build a home. We witness a man stripped of his ego, forced to walk in the shoes of those he despised, only to find his true humanity in the dust of his humiliation. It is a powerful reminder that rock bottom isn't the end, it's often the solid foundation we need to rebuild our lives with kindness and integrity. If you also believe that transformation is possible and that unconditional love is the ultimate superpower, then you have found your tribe. Subscribe right now and join our community. Let's prove to the algorithm that hope and redemption are what the world really wants to watch. Now, I need you to take action. Hit that like button if you think Piper West made the right choice by forgiving him. It helps this message reach millions. Go to the comments and answer me this: have you ever forgiven someone who hurt you, or are some bridges meant to remain burned? I want to read your story. And finally, share this video with someone who needs a reminder that it is never too late to rewrite their destiny. And while you are here, don't let the inspiration fade. Our channel is a treasure chest filled with emotional roller coasters, just like this one-click the playlist on screen, to binge watch our past gems and discover other unforgettable journeys. And for what comes next, you have no idea what we have planned. It is going to be even bigger. Turn on that notification bell immediately so you don't miss the next update. Trust me, you do not want to be left out of the next emotion.